Good morning, guys. Welcome to the last lesson of Streetcar Named Desire. So today we're going to open up our PDFs to page 141 where we begin scene 11. Just to remind you as to what happened in scene 10, it concluded with the rape of Blanche. Obviously Stanley was the one who committed that act. And so we're going to look at the aftermath of it. So if you look at the very bottom of 141 in the scene description, we've got the time moving forward several weeks, okay? And at this point, we have Stella packing up Blanche's things, so we can clearly see that Blanche is leaving. And while that's also occurring, we've got Blanche taking a bath, and we can probably assume is drinking as well, because she's had a great deal that she's been dealing with. And then finally in the description, we have the men sitting down for a game of poker. So, you know, the one thing I want you to take away from that description is that it's business as usual, really, with the exception of the packing. Nothing's changed. So you kind of have to wonder, how did that happen after something big like a rape had occurred? You know, why is Stella still here in this apartment? Why is Stanley not in jail? You know, these sorts of things. So on page 142, we move ahead to, you know, Stanley and the men dealing with their poker game. And something he says here really struck me, and I'm going to read this to you. Let me grab my paper. He says, you know what luck is? Luck is believing that you're lucky. You know, take it Salerno. I believed I was lucky. I figured that 4 out of 5 would not come through, but I would, and I did. I put that down as a rule. To hold front position in the rat race, you've got to believe that you're lucky. So my question to you guys is, you know, how has Stanley been lucky in this play? Well, for one, he basically escapes unscathed. He isn't punished for his actions of domestic violence toward his wife, which has occurred several times. Obviously, he's never in trouble for any of the fights he's caused during poker nights and anything with, you know, he had an altercation at the bowling alley. So he's gotten away with a lot of violence. And then obviously the whole incident with the rape, you know, he's not in jail for that. So he's lucky. He got away with it. And that's probably what, in a way, he's trying to get at. Moving on, we've got a conversation between Stella and Eunice after this what we just talked about with Stanley. And this is really bottom of 142 and then page 143. So, you know, Eunice is asking how Blanche is doing right now, and we can see she's not doing very well because according to Stella, she's not willing to eat things and all she really wants to do is drink. And, you know, Eunice was asking, like, what did you tell her? Which is referencing where Blanche is going. And she said, you know, we just told her that she's going to go rest in the country. And I think they just let Blanche's imagination take over. And of course it did. And, you know, she's in her mind believes that she's headed off to hang out with Shep Huntley. So, so they're, you know, it's kind of deceptive. You know, we kind of get on Blanche for that, or we look down on Blanche for telling a lot of lies when I don't believe these people are much better, really. Moving on to page 144, there was a line that Stella had said that really struck me, and I have a lot to tell you about with that. So Stella at the very top was struggling internally with whether or not she did the right thing to send Blanche away. And Eunice said, what else could you do? And Stella says, I couldn't believe her story and go on living with Stanley. So we know that Blanche had told her sister what had happened in scene 10, and Stella didn't believe it. She didn't choose her sister, okay? That's essentially what I was getting at. She had to make a final choice between the two of them. My question to you is, how do you feel about this choice? My other question is it a simple decision? You know, think about why or why not you feel this way. Here are my thoughts. So Stella's in a really difficult spot. She might have trouble believing Blanche's story because of the huge amounts of lies that Stella has been throwing at her, Blanche has been throwing at her this entire time. Okay, from the very beginning, she's not told the truth. So I'm sure in Stella's mind, she's probably like, why is this any different? She's also very aware that Blanche and Stanley do not get along, and Blanche might be willing to tell her anything to get Stella away from him. So that might be one of the reasons why she chose to look over that. But on the other hand, you know, Stella's very aware that her husband is aggressive and violent, and he also has this kind of like large sexual appetite. You know, he takes what he wants, and he's done that with her. Like, why not do that with her sister? So anyway, there is that too to consider. But like I said, either way, I don't think it's that simple. I think she's very torn. And, you know, while Blanche is her sister, Stanley is her husband and the father of her child. So it's not that simple to just pack up and leave him. And even if she did, another question she'd have to consider is, where's she going to go? She can't just go back down to the plantation to Belle Reve, because that's been gone a long time ago. They have no family to go back to fall back on. So it would mean that she would be taking her sister and this probably newborn child and creating a brand new life all from scratch. And I just don't think it's that easy for someone like Stella in this time period to do this sort of thing. So in the end, I do believe Stella made, even if she did have like a slight idea that her sister was right, I think she made a conscious choice to believe her husband over her sister. So anyway, it's a very terrible and hard situation. Moving on to page 145, we've got Blanche does appear, you know, at the door, and notice that she's wearing this red satin robe. Kind of interesting that she would be wearing this. I don't know if it necessarily symbolizes her desire for anything. It could maybe represent Stanley's desire that he had demonstrated in the previous scene, or I don't know, I'm kind of drawing some other associations, but think back to like Scarlet Letter. I don't know if you know anything about it, but in the book, a woman had committed adultery. She had to wear the Scarlet Letter A for meeting adulterer, so it just kind of showed that she was morally stained. So maybe that's why she's wearing this red satin robe. But another thing that's going on at the top of 145 is the fact that she's dealing with Vesuviana again. The polka music is back in her head. So as of right now, you know, she's not necessarily reliving the night of the rape. She's reliving the night of her husband's suicide. Going down to the bottom of page 145, we do have some evidence of Blanche being absolutely terrified of Stanley, because as soon as she hears his voice, it shocks her, and she makes these gestures and forms his name on her lips, and you know, she's truly scared, and we can't blame her. You know, can you imagine staying in that apartment after something like that, something that traumatic has happened to you? I mean, I couldn't deal with it. So anyway, going forward, we've got Blanche starting to notice that things are not quite right on page 146, and no one's willing to tell her anything, and they just try to compliment her to kind of like shift the conversation. So again, more deception on their end. So, you know, again, we do have to acknowledge that. Going on to page 147, this is one of the final instances where we discuss clothing and color symbolism. This is in Blanche's outfit for her departure. So she selects her clothing, and of course Eunice kind of compliments her on her choices and calls her jacket a pretty blue color, you know, which is pretty general. You know, she's not specific on what kind of blue it is. Stella believes it's lilac colored, so more of a purple vibe, but Blanche corrects them both and tells them that it's Delia Robbia blue, and she explains that it's the blue of the robe in the old Madonna pictures. If you know anything about Madonna or in terms of religion, Madonna is a representation of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and knowing anything about her, she was a virgin when she conceived Jesus, so she was in fact a very pure and good woman. And it's very fitting, I would say, that Blanche would choose this specific color in reference to Mary, Mother of Jesus, because I think Blanche very much would like to be like Mary and be that pure woman, or maybe still wants to assert that she is a pure person. So I don't know, but this is one final little area for the color symbolism. Going on to page 148, we've got